The officer said my name in a tone so controlled it made my spine go cold. "Mrs. Marlowe, we have 2 children here who say you're their grandmother." For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. I was Evelyn Marlowe, 68 years old, retired librarian, a woman who spent most evenings with tea and a worn notebook. I was not someone who received calls like this. I had said no to babysitting just hours earlier. I had been firm, clear. I finally chose myself for once. And now an officer from the Portland Police Bureau was calling me about Ava and Jonah as if the world had spun off its axis. What do you mean you have them?" My voice cracked. "They should be with their mother." There was a pause, small, careful. "Ma'am, the children were dropped off alone. A taxi driver left them at an address on Riverside Avenue." Riverside. My breath caught. "That's the wrong side of the city." "Yes, ma'am. The address provided was incomplete. No number. No indication of which side of the river. They were found crying outside an office building by a passerby." I put a hand on the counter to steady myself. I could almost feel the room pulling away from me as if everything familiar had blurred. "Are they hurt?" "Not physically," he answered. "But they're shaken. They asked for you immediately." My heart twisted. I had spent 8 years building trust with Ava and 5 with Jonah. I was the warm lap, the story before bedtime, the hands that tied shoelaces when their mother Sienna rushed out the door. And now, this. I told Sienna no. I whispered more to myself. I told her I wasn't available today. The officer hesitated. "Mrs. Marlowe, I don't believe this was a misunderstanding." His words hit harder than I expected. He did not explain. He did not need to. I knew the way my daughter-in-law reacted when she felt inconvenienced. I knew the brittle smile, the clipped replies, the way she wielded silence like a weapon. But this putting 2 small children into a taxi with no proper address. My keys slipped from my fingers. I snatched them up with shaking hands. "I'm coming now. I'll be there as soon as I can." The drive to the precinct blurred. I heard nothing but my own breathing, too quick, too thin, and the ugly chorus of thoughts clawing up my ribs. This is my fault. If I had just said yes like always, Ava and Jonah would have been home. Safe. Not abandoned on a sidewalk in the wrong part of Portland. At a red light, I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel and tried to breathe. Sienna's voice echoed in my memory. "You act like saying no is some kind of trauma." Maybe to her it was. Maybe she needed control so badly she couldn't stand being contradicted. By the time I pulled into the precinct lot, my hands had gone numb. I hurried inside, feet moving before my mind caught up. And then I heard it. Ava's voice, small, broken, unmistakably hers, carrying down the hallway. "Where's Grandma Evelyn? I want Grandma Evelyn." The sound snapped something open inside me. I headed toward it, ready to face whatever waited behind that door. 3 days before the police called me, my phone rang while I was sorting laundry. I saw Sienna's name flash across the screen, and my stomach tightened before I even answered. Her calls never came with pleasant news. "Evelyn," she said, skipping a greeting. "I need you to take the kids this weekend, starting tonight." Her voice had that clipped, expectant tone, like the decision had already been made. I kept the phone pressed to my ear, grounding myself with a slow breath. "I can't." "Sienna," I said. My voice was steady, even gentle. "I have commitments this weekend." She let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Commitments? You are retired. That doesn't mean I'm available at a moment's notice. You watched them last month," she pressed. "And the weekend before that. Why are you making this difficult? I'm not making anything difficult. I'm just not free." There was a pause, brief but sharp. Then her words sliced through the air. "You're selfish. You sit at home doing nothing. What could you possibly have going on?" Her cruelty still surprised me even after all these years. "I am not available," I repeated. "I'm telling you respectfully. Respectfully." Her voice rose, brittle and hot. "Do you even care how much pressure I'm under?" "Of course I do," I said. But I'm not the only solution. She scoffed. Daniel's out of town. He's useless right now. That at least was honest. My son was in Seattle for work. She always waited until he was gone to make her demands. You could arrange a sitter, I offered. Why would I pay for one when you can do it? She snapped. Because I'm saying no, I answered quietly. There was a long exhale on her end, sharp, frustrated. You know, Evelyn, sometimes I think you enjoy watching me struggle. My chest ached. That's not true. It is, she shot back. You want to act like you're the victim all the time, like I'm the problem. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Her tone sharpened. I'm counting on you to be there. You always are. Not this time. It was the first time I had said those words with real conviction. They hung in the quiet between us, changing something I couldn't name. Then her anger vanished. Not gradually, instantly. When she spoke again, her voice was completely flat. Fine. Just one word. Short. Controlled. Wrong. Sienna. I started, but she cut me off. Enjoy your commitments. The way she said commitments carried a strange, mocking lilt. Then the call ended. No slam, no shout, just a clean, cold click. I stood frozen in my kitchen. The silence around me felt heavier than her yelling ever had. It wasn't normal for her to give up. Sienna did not accept boundaries. She pushed until they broke. I tried to shake it off, folding laundry, making tea, distracting myself with small motions. But the air in my house felt strange, like someone had left a window open and a chill had settled inside. Later that afternoon, I called Daniel. Your wife spoke to me earlier, I said. She wanted me to take the kids this weekend. Oh, he said, distracted in that way he always was when he was mid-project. Did you say yes, no? I told her I couldn't. A beat of silence on his end. Good for you, Mom. You deserve a break. He meant it kindly, but he didn't hear the undertone of alarm in my voice. He didn't know Sienna like I did. I just wanted you to know, I said softly. Thanks, he replied. I'll call them tomorrow, but tomorrow never came. He was in meetings all day, moving from hotel to conference hall, and by then, Sienna had already made her decision. That night, I lay in bed replaying the call. Not the yelling that was familiar. It was the moment where her voice went quiet. That quiet was the real warning. I kept thinking the uneasy feeling would disappear once I kept myself busy, but it stayed with me through the morning. I folded towels, wiped the counters, tried to lose myself in small motions. Nothing worked. For most of my life, I had been the person everyone could call without warning. When my sister moved across the country, I babysat her son for whole summers. When my parents aged, I handled every doctor visit, every late bill, every emergency. When Daniel married Sienna, I stepped into the same old role without even thinking. Backup caretaker, peacekeeper, problem solver. The woman who filled in the cracks so no one else had to feel their own fault lines. And Thomas, my Thomas, used to tell me gently, Evelyn, you do too much. He said it with a smile, soft eyes, warm hands. He was the only one who looked at me as if I deserved rest. I lost him 12 years before, and with him I lost the only person who ever reminded me I was more than useful. I breathed out slowly and sank into one of the kitchen chairs. Thomas would have known what to say about the call with Sienna. He always understood when something was truly wrong beneath the surface. A knock sounded at my door. I wiped my hands on my jeans and opened it to find Gloria Benton standing there with a bag of lemons from her tree. Morning, Evelyn, she said. You look like your mind is 12 miles away. I had a rough call yesterday, I admitted. Gloria stepped inside. She was in her 70s, but moved with the confidence of someone who had long stopped caring about other people's judgments. Family. Who else? I gave a tired laugh. Sienna wanted me to take the kids for the whole weekend. I told her no. Gloria raised her brows. Good. You get to say no now. That's allowed at your age. I know. But the words sat strangely in my chest. She didn't take it well. She never takes anything well unless it benefits her, Gloria muttered. Daniel still defending her. He tries not to get between us, I said. But she has a way of shaping his opinion. Shaping, Gloria snorted. She could sell sand in a desert. I smiled, but it faded quickly. He used to be more grounded. Before Sienna, he'd come to me for advice. Over the years, he started repeating her phrases. Mom, you're overthinking. Mom, you worry too much. Mom, Sienna says you take things too personally. Gloria rested a hand on my arm. She wants to control the narrative. People like that always do. I didn't respond. Instead, I reached for my phone on the counter. Some instinct made me scroll back through old messages with Sienna. I kept swiping further and further. Years of clipped texts. Orders disguised as requests. Guilt hidden in emojis. Little shoves. Little rewrites of the truth. Always subtle enough that I blamed myself. Then I found a thread from when Ava was barely 3 years old. Sienna, can you watch her tonight? Daniel and I are going out. Me, I have plans, sweetie. Sienna, so cancel them. She loves you more anyway. I stared at the words, the tone, the entitlement, the ease with which she dismissed my entire life. This is who she's always been, I murmured. Gloria peered at the screen. And you always gave in. I thought I was helping, I said. I thought I was doing what families do. Gloria squeezed my hand. You were doing what you were trained to do. I closed the message thread as a cold awareness settled through me. This wasn't a new problem. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern I had never wanted to see. And now Ava and Jonah were caught inside it. 3 days earlier, in a house across Portland, Sienna, Marlo moved through her hallway in sharp, irritated motions. Shoes tossed into a bag, makeup zipped, dresses yanked from hangers as if they'd offended her. Ava stood in the doorway, holding her small backpack, eyes wide, and too quiet for an 8-year-old. Jonah clung to his toy dinosaur, the way some children held a blanket, pressing it tight to his chest. Mom, Ava said softly, "Is Grandma coming here?" "No." Sienna snapped. "You're going to her." Ava shifted her weight. "Did she say yes?" Sienna stopped moving and pressed her fingers against her temple. "Do not start. Your grandmother knows what she's doing." Jonah's lip trembled, but he didn't say a word. He had learned long ago that silence kept the peace more effectively than tears. Sienna threw the last dress into her suitcase and slammed it shut. "Get your shoes on," she ordered. Ava tried again, voice small. "I just want to know if she'll be there." "She'll be there," Sienna said. "Now move." They followed her to the kitchen table where she grabbed a scrap of paper and scribbled a street name. No number, no direction. Just a handwritten line that meant nothing without context. Ava leaned in cautiously. "Is that the whole address?" "She knows the street," Sienna muttered. "Stop fussing." Jonah tugged on her sleeve. "Mom, can we go with you instead?" "No," she fired back. "I have an event. Adults only. I cannot drag 2 children with me everywhere I go." She looked at him as if he'd inconvenienced her by breathing. Ava hugged her backpack tighter. "Grandma said she's busy." Sienna cut her off with a sharp look. "You two are too young to understand how much pressure I deal with. Grandma Evelyn knows better. She's always there." Ava and Jonah exchanged a worried glance, the kind children share when they know the truth but have no power to speak it. A car horn sounded outside. Sienna grabbed the scribbled paper and ushered them out the door. A taxi waited at the curb, the driver leaning against the door with a bored expression. "2 kids for this address," Sienna said, shoving the paper toward him. He frowned. "Ma'am, this is only a street name. Riverside has a west and an east side. Which one?" "It doesn't matter," she said briskly. "She knows they're coming. She'll find them." The man hesitated. I really need a number. I said she knows. Sienna repeated, her tone sliding into something colder, something final. Just take them. Ava grabbed her mother's hand. Mom, wait, please. Jonah clutched her leg. I don't want to go alone. Sienna peeled Jonah off with a practiced motion. Enough. You're making a scene. Get in. They climbed into the back seat with small, resigned movements. The driver cast them a confused look, but closed the door anyway. Sienna didn't wave. She didn't watch the car pull away. She turned back toward her house, already typing on her phone. Within seconds, she'd posted a photo of her suitcase on social media with a cheerful caption, "Weekend escape." Much needed self-care. Ava and Jonah were already disappearing down the street, two small figures sent off with nothing but a street name and the assumption that I would catch them. I wasn't even home. I didn't even know. Ava reached me first. She ran straight into my arms, shaking so hard I felt it through my ribs. Jonah followed, clutching his dinosaur, his eyes red from crying. Grandma Ava gasped. We didn't know where to go. It was cold, Jonah whispered, burying his face against my coat. My throat tightened. I pulled them both close. I'm here. I'm right here. Officer Harper Cole stepped forward, keeping his voice low. Mrs. Marlowe, let's sit down for a moment. The kids are safe now. Safe. It didn't feel like enough. Ava wiped her face with her sleeve. We knocked on the door, but it wasn't your house. Jonah nodded, tiny hands trembling. Then the taxi left. He just left. Their words cut through me like a blade. He left you alone. Ava's chin quivered. He said he had to go. Officer Cole cleared his throat gently. The neighbor who found them said they were outside the building for at least 20 minutes. I held the kids tighter. They should never have been there at all. He nodded. Mrs. Marlowe. The address provided to the taxi was incomplete. No number. And it was the east side of Riverside, not the west. If the driver hadn't been questioned by the responding officer afterward, we wouldn't even know who dropped them off. Ava leaned into me, exhausted. Mom said you were going to be there. My stomach twisted. Sweetheart, I did not know. I would have come right away. Officer Cole lowered his voice. This may qualify as child endangerment. I need to document your statement. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. Sienna's name lit the screen. I silenced it. Officer Cole nodded slightly. You do not have to answer. I sat with Ava and Jonah until the phone buzzed again. And again. On the third call, Officer Cole rested a hand on the table. If you are willing, it helps to have it on speaker. I hesitated, then answered. Where are my kids? Sienna's voice exploded through the speaker. The driver said he dropped them off hours ago. Evelyn, what did you do? I flinched. Ava and Jonah curled closer. Officer Cole leaned forward. Mrs. Marlowe isn't responsible for Sienna. I cut in my voice. Shaking, you wrote the wrong address. You sent them to the wrong side of Portland. A beat of silence, then pure fury. No, I did not. You were supposed to be there. This is your fault, Jonah whimpered. Ava started crying again. Officer Cole raised a hand and I passed him the phone. Mrs. Marlowe, he said formally. This is Officer Harper Cole with the Portland Police Bureau. Your children were found abandoned in front of a commercial building. You need to return immediately. This incident is being documented. Sienna sputtered, her voice breaking. Are you serious? Evelyn twisted this. She, Officer Cole, ended the call. Ava pressed her forehead to my shoulder. Grandma, I was scared. I know, I whispered, brushing her hair back. You did nothing wrong. Officer Cole opened a notepad. Mrs. Marlowe, I will need your statement on record. I also need to file this for CPS review. Jonah clung to my sleeve. Don't let her yell anymore. I wrapped an arm around him, steadying both of us. I would not let Sienna hurt them again. Ava and Jonah clung to me, as if letting go would drop them back onto that cold sidewalk. I kept one arm wrapped around each of them, my hands smoothing their hair the way I used to do when they were babies and afraid of thunder. "I want to go home with you," Ava whispered. "You will," I said. "Just stay close." Jonah tucked his dinosaur between us and tried to stop sobbing. "Grandma, Mom yelled when we asked about you." My chest tightened. "I know, sweetheart. None of this is your fault." Officer Harper Cole returned to the small room, speaking carefully. "Mrs. Marlowe, I've noted the initial statements. CPS has been notified. A caseworker is en route." Ava's breath hitched. "Are they taking us away?" "No," I said quickly, guiding her chin up. "No one is taking you anywhere without me." Officer Cole gave a slight nod confirming it, without saying the words aloud. Jonah pressed his face into my sleeve. "I thought we did something bad." "No," I said firmly. "You were put in a bad situation. That's different." As I held them, a wave of emotions threatened to pull me under. Guilt, it gnawed at the edges of my mind. If I had just said yes like always, they never would have been abandoned. Anger, sharp, rising, unfamiliar, burned under my ribs. I had let this pattern continue for too long. Sienna pushed, and I folded, again and again. And now it was the kids who paid for it. I had taught everyone in my family exactly what they could expect from me, quiet compliance. Officer Cole pulled a chair closer. "Mrs. Marlowe, I need to be direct with you." I looked up. "Go ahead. You have been cooperative, but the next steps are serious." The children were left without supervision in an unsafe environment. If you minimize what happened or avoid reporting certain details, CPS cannot build an accurate assessment. Jonah shifted nervously. Ava tightened her grip. "I understand," I said. He continued. "If you stay silent about a pattern even unintentionally, they stay at risk. You're their grandmother. Your voice matters." The truth of it hit harder than the cold air had outside. Protecting Sienna or avoiding conflict meant exposing the kids to more danger. Staying quiet wasn't kindness, it was participation. My voice felt different when I spoke again, steadier, grounded in something I hadn't felt in years. "I'll tell CPS everything." Officer Cole nodded. "Good. Marina Wells is the caseworker assigned tonight. She's thorough but fair," Ava whispered. "Is she mean?" "No," he said softly. "She's here to help you." As he stepped out to take a call, I rested my cheek against Ava's hair. "You're safe now," I murmured. Jonah looked up at me with swollen eyes. "You won't let Mom be mad at us." "No," I said. "I won't let anyone be mad at you for something you didn't do." Outside the room, I heard footsteps paperwork, shifting a woman's voice, speaking quietly to the front desk. Something inside me straightened at the sound. Officer Cole returned his expression serious. "Mrs. Marlowe, CPS is here." Ava's fingers curled into mine. Jonah climbed into my lap without asking. I held them both, feeling the invisible line I had just crossed, the one between silence and truth, fear and responsibility. And for the first time, I did not step back over it. The woman who stepped into the small room carried a folder pressed to her chest and a calmness that felt practiced, almost gentle. She introduced herself with a quiet smile. "I'm Marina Wells," she said. "I'm the CPS caseworker assigned tonight." Ava straightened in her seat. Jonah shrank into my side. I kept a steady hand on his back. Marina crouched to their level. "I'm just here to make sure you're both okay, that's all." Ava nodded slowly, but Jonah didn't speak. Marina stood and motioned to the corner of the room. "Mrs. Marlowe, could we talk for a few minutes? Someone will stay with the children." A female officer slipped inside, offering Ava a small, stuffed bear from the lost and found box. Ava took it with both hands. I followed Marina to the far side of the room. She opened her folder, her tone soft but unwavering. "I'm going to ask some difficult questions. I need your honesty. I'll answer whatever you need, I said. She studied me for a moment. Has anything like this happened before? My breath lodged in my throat. Not like this. Not this severe. But there have been smaller incidents, she pressed. I looked back at Ava and Jonah, two small bodies trying to look brave. Something inside me loosened. Yes, I said. There have been. Tell me. I swallowed. Times when Sienna showed up hours late. Times when she would cancel mid-errand and expect me to take over. She once left Jonah at my doorstep without telling me she was coming. He was 3 years old. She said she forgot. She hadn't mentioned it. I hesitated. Every time I confronted her, she said I was being dramatic. Marina's pen paused. How often were you caring for the children without agreement? Too often, I said quietly. I thought I was helping. You were filling in gaps, Marina replied. Have the children ever expressed fear or discomfort related to their mother's behavior? A lump rose in my throat. Ava once asked if I could keep Jonah overnight because Mom forgets things. I thought she was just upset that day. Marina wrote another note. The controlled concern on her face sharpened into something graver. This is more than a one-time lapse, she said. It suggests a pattern. Hearing the word pattern made my stomach twist. I had known it in my gut, but saying it aloud carved it into something undeniable. Marina closed the folder. Based on what we've learned tonight, this case may escalate quickly. Escalate how I asked. She didn't soften it. A formal investigation. Safety assessments. Possibly temporary custody arrangements depending on what we uncover. My pulse stumbled. Daniel is out of town. He doesn't know any of this yet. We will contact him, but right now your cooperation matters most. She slid a form toward me. I need any documentation you have, texts, call logs, messages where you said no, and she insisted anyway. Anything that shows her decisions leading up to tonight. I pictured the years of messages, the dismissals, the guilt, the moments I let pass to avoid being difficult. I'll gather everything I said. Marina nodded, once approval gratitude, and the weight of what was coming. Good. The children will stay with you tonight. We'll conduct a home visit tomorrow morning. My heart clenched, but it wasn't fear this time. It was resolve. Ava looked up from the bear as I approached. Grandma, are we going home? Yes, I said, brushing a tear from her cheek. You're coming with me. As I held their hands and walked them out of the room, I felt the truth settle heavily in my chest. I was no longer the woman who kept quiet to keep the peace. And stepping into that new version of myself felt both terrifying and necessary. Daniel arrived at my house before 10 the next morning, still wearing the conference badge around his neck. He looked exhausted, eyes red, shoulders tight, breath uneven. Ava and Jonah rushed to him the second he stepped through the door. He dropped to his knees, pulling them into his arms. I'm here, he whispered. I'm here now. Ava trembled against him. Jonah clung to his shirt, as if afraid Daniel might disappear again. I waited until he stood before I spoke. Did you read everything? He nodded once, then collapsed into a chair, as if the movement took the strength out of him. The police report, the CPS notes, your statement. His voice cracked. Mom! I did not know. I swear I had no idea she would do something like this. I sat across from him. I know you didn't. He rubbed his face with both hands, fighting for composure. The driver said she gave him one street name. No number, no direction. How could she think that was safe? She told the children I would be there, I said quietly. She assumed I would break. He flinched at that, an old truth hitting a fresh wound. She said you agreed. She told me you offered. She said you were happy to take them. Jonah climbed into his lap. Daniel kissed the top of his head, then looked at me with a kind of grief I hadn't seen on his face since Thomas died. Mom, he whispered. I should have listened to you years ago. Every time you tried to tell me she was manipulative, every time you hesitated, I brushed it off. I let her explain your feelings to me instead of asking you myself. I felt the sting of those years settling between us. You wanted to believe the best about your wife. But she edited your words, he said. She edited you. She would repeat conversations we never had or twist things until I doubted my own memory. I thought it was just stress or miscommunication. I did not think she would ever. His voice broke again. I left my children with someone who would put them in danger to win an argument with you. Ava leaned against him. Daddy, can we live with Grandma forever? Daniel swallowed hard. You're staying with her for now. That's what's safest. I placed a hand on the table, grounding both of us. CPS will be back today. They'll talk to you. They'll want everything, messages, dates, anything you remember. He nodded. I'll give them every detail, even the things I've ignored. He met my eyes. I'm not defending her anymore. There was a firmness in his voice I hadn't heard since he was a teenager standing up to a bullying coach, but now it carried the weight of a father who realized the world was far more fragile than he'd believed. Jonah whispered into his ear. Daniel held him close, then looked at me again this time, with resolve, not regret. I'm going to protect them, he said, no matter what it takes. The first call came while Daniel was upstairs helping Ava unpack. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway, hoping it might be CPS. It wasn't. Evelyn, my younger sister Margaret hissed before I could speak. What on earth are you doing? Sienna just called me in tears. You cannot involve CPS in family matters. I held the phone tighter. Margaret, the children were abandoned, on the street, alone. That taxi driver exaggerated, she snapped. Things happen. You're overreacting. I saw them, I said. They were terrified. Margaret let out a disgusted breath. You always had a flair for drama. Do not ruin Sienna's life over one misunderstanding. The words scraped something raw inside me. If this had been your grandchildren, would you call it a misunderstanding? But she hung up without answering. Not even 5 minutes later, another call came. My cousin Elaine this time. Evelyn, please stop whatever you're doing. Sienna is spiraling. She says you're trying to steal her children. I nearly dropped the phone. That is not what's happening. You need to think about the bigger picture, Elaine insisted. You know how Sienna gets. You should have worked it out privately. This is extreme. She put Ava and Jonah in a taxi without an address, I said. How am I supposed to handle that privately? Elaine lowered her voice. We're all worried about her. You know how fragile she is. I felt my jaw tighten. I'm worried about the kids. It's not your place to intervene that way, she said. You're going to break this family apart. This time it was me who ended the call. Not long after, I received a message from one of the women at church. Evelyn, we heard what you did. You should be ashamed. Mothers make mistakes. Grandmothers support them. Another message followed. Please stay home from choir this week. The tension will be distracting. I stared at the screen, stunned at how quickly the judgment spread. Word traveled fast in communities that valued appearances more than the truth. And Sienna knew exactly how to play that weakness, tears' soft voice, claiming she was misunderstood and overwhelmed. While I stood at the sink, trying to collect myself, Daniel came downstairs with Jonah perched on his hip. Mom. Who was calling? I shook my head. Just family. He heard the strain in my voice. Did they say something? I leaned against the counter, too tired to hide it. They think I'm trying to destroy Sienna. Daniel's jaw clenched. Unbelievable. It's easier for them to blame me, I said, because if they don't, they have to admit she endangered 2 children. He set Jonah in a chair and pulled out his phone. Look at this, he said, turning the screen toward me. A family group chat, one I was rarely invited to. Dozens of messages. Sienna crying in voice notes. Sienna typing frantic paragraphs. Sienna saying I was punishing her. Sienna insisting the children were never in danger. And the family, my family, comforting her, validating her, scolding me in my absence. Daniel exhaled slowly. Someone leaked the police report to the chat, except it's cropped. It only shows the part where they were found safe, not why they were there. It felt like the air drained from the room. Daniel clenched his phone. She is twisting everything. I know, I said softly. He stepped closer. Mom, don't let them scare you into backing down. I looked at my grandchildren sitting at the table, Ava drawing with the bear in her lap, Jonah whispering stories to his dinosaur. I won't, I said. For the first time in my 68 years, I finally meant it. Victor Hayes arrived at my house the following morning, wearing a navy suit and an expression that told me he had already read more than most people would stomach. He introduced himself with a firm handshake to Daniel, then turned to me with a softer one. Mrs. Marlowe, he said, I'm very sorry you're going through this. I've reviewed the initial report. We need to act fast. Ava and Jonah were in the living room with Gloria Benton, who had come by to help. We'd tried to keep the children occupied, but even from the kitchen, their quietness felt heavy. Victor opened his briefcase. I need every form of communication you have with Sienna. Texts, call logs, anything you kept. I exhaled slowly. It's a lot. That's good, he replied. Patterns matter. Daniel sat beside me, jaw tight. We'll get you everything. I began scrolling through years of messages, screenshotting, forwarding, compiling. Each text felt like picking a scab. I'd ignored small comments, accusations, tiny manipulations that at the time seemed easier to swallow than confront. She always did this, I murmured at one point, telling me I was dramatic, making her problems my responsibility. Victor nodded. That's why context is crucial. These are not isolated incidents. I handed him my phone, my voice catching. I feel foolish for letting it go on this long. You're not foolish, he said. You were trying to keep peace. Many people do. But peacekeeping becomes enabling when someone weaponizes it. Daniel looked down at the table. Mom, I should have seen it. I should have questioned her more. Victor raised a hand. Blame won't help us right now. What will help is documentation. He flipped open a folder. I also need any proof showing you told her no this weekend. I showed him the thread from 2 days before the one where I told Sienna I wasn't available, and her reply dripped with disdain. Victor scanned the screen, then tapped his pen lightly. This is clear. She knowingly sent them somewhere she knew you wouldn't be. The words made my stomach turn. He continued. We will request immediate intervention. Temporary custody for Daniel is likely given the severity. Daniel jerked his head up. Temporary custody. Victor nodded. There is enough here to argue imminent risk. I felt the weight of those words sink in. Imminent risk. Victor met my eyes. This could become an emergency custody case by the end of the week. The room fell quiet. Ava laughed softly in the living room as Gloria told her a story. The sound should have eased me, but instead it broke something open inside me. This isn't just paperwork, I said quietly. These children are scared. They were abandoned. Victor lowered his voice. Then let's make sure it never happens again. He gathered the printed screenshots and slipped them into the folder. CPS will call you tonight. They'll ask more questions. Be honest. Do not soften anything. I won't, I said. For the first time in my life, the truth no longer felt like conflict. It felt like protection. 3 days after the police found Ava and Jonah on the wrong side of Portland, my phone rang just after sunrise. I was in the kitchen pouring cereal for the kids, trying to make the morning feel normal. Daniel sat at the table, half awake, his shoulders tense from another night of restless sleep. When the phone vibrated, I stepped into the hallway to answer. Mrs. Marlowe, Victor Hayes said, his tone clipped with urgency. The judge reviewed our emergency petition. I held the phone tighter. And it's approved, he said. Effective immediately. Daniel has temporary custody. Full physical placement. The relief hit me so fast it made my knees weak. Thank God. That's not all, Victor continued. CPS compiled the documents you provided. The police report lined up with their assessment. The court has ordered a formal investigation into Sienna for child endangerment. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Not from fear this time, from the strange, raw sensation of justice finally pulling a chair up to the table. Daniel appeared at the end of the hallway watching my face. I put the call on speaker. Victor repeated the ruling. Daniel closed his eyes, a slow tear sliding down his cheek. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you so much. You earned this," Victor said. "The evidence is overwhelming. But be prepared, she's not going to take this quietly." "She never does," Daniel murmured. Victor exhaled. "Keep your phones on. CPS will schedule a follow-up. And do not answer if Sienna tries to bargain, threaten, or guilt trip. Redirect everything through me." "We will," I said. We thanked him again and ended the call. 30 seconds later, my phone lit up with Sienna's name. Daniel stiffened. "Mom, don't." I stared at the screen. The call kept ringing, vibrating against my palm like something alive, frantic, desperate. I answered. The sound that burst through the speaker wasn't a voice, it was a snarl. "How dare you," Sienna screamed. "What did you tell them? What lies did you feed them?" Ava and Jonah froze at the kitchen entryway, instinctively shrinking behind Daniel. He stepped forward protectively. "Sienna," I said, keeping my voice steady. "This isn't about me." The court reviewed the evidence. "You did this," she shrieked. "You've been poisoning them against me since the day they were born." "No," I said. "I've protected them from the consequences of your choices for years. That stops now." "You think you're the hero," she spat. "You think he'll keep them away from me. I'm their mother. Then you should have acted like one." Daniel said, stepping beside me. Her voice cracked with fury. "Daniel, you're siding with her over me." "I'm siding with our children," he said. "They were abandoned, Sienna. They were terrified. That driver lied. The cops blew it out of proportion. Mom twisted everything." Her voice was unraveling, blaming everyone, gripping every thread except the truth. I inhaled, letting the calm settle over my words. "Sienna, this call is being documented." Silence. Then a single trembling breath. "You're going to regret this," she whispered. It was not a threat of violence. She didn't have that kind of power. It was a threat of chaos, manipulation, the kind she had lived by for years. But those days were done. "I'm no longer afraid of you," I said. She let out a feral, fractured scream before the call abruptly cut off. Daniel leaned against the wall, wiping his eyes. "I should have protected them sooner." "You're protecting them now," I said. "That's what matters." Ava and Jonah crept forward. I opened my arms, and they came to me without hesitation. Behind them, my phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Victor. "Do not answer her again. She is in freefall." I put my phone face down on the table. Sienna was losing control. And for the first time, I could see exactly how far she might fall. The courthouse in downtown Portland always felt too grand for the kinds of heartbreak that passed through its doors. High ceilings, polished floors, the soft echo of footsteps. Everything looked dignified, almost serene. But inside courtroom 4, the air felt sharp enough to cut. Daniel sat beside his attorney, Victor Hayes. I sat directly behind them, my hands folded tightly in my lap. Ava and Jonah were with a CPS aide in another room. They weren't allowed inside. Thank God. The door opened, and Sienna stepped in like she owned the world. Hair curled in soft waves. Makeup subtle and flawless. A pastel dress that screamed gentle motherhood. A small tissue in her hand. She looked like the picture you'd find in a magazine titled Modern Parenting, How to Stay Calm and Connected. She didn't look at me or Daniel. She didn't acknowledge a single person except her attorney, who placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, as if guiding her through a performance she'd practiced 100 times. When the judge entered, everyone rose. The hearing began with procedural announcements. Then Sienna's attorney launched straight into character. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, "my client is a devoted mother. She has never once put her children in harm's way. This situation is being wildly exaggerated by a grandmother who is struggling with age-related stress and emotional instability." A quiet gasp left me before I could stop it. Daniel tensed in his chair. The attorney continued, "Mrs. Marlowe has a long history of overreacting and inserting herself unnecessarily into family affairs. We intend to show she is motivated by resentment, not concern." My mouth went dry. I felt Daniel's hand reach back and squeeze mine. Then it was Victor's turn. He stood calmly. No theatrics, no big gestures. "Your Honor," he began, "we will present police documentation, CPS findings, and evidence that Mrs. Brennan—" He nodded towards Sienna, knowingly sent 2 young children to an incorrect address with no supervision, no verification, and no safety plan in place. Sienna dabbed her eye delicately, as if she were a victim in a tragic play. Her attorney stepped forward. This was a misunderstanding caused by a rushed moment. She wrote the wrong address in error. She believed Mrs. Marlowe was expecting the children. Victor lifted a paper. "We have text messages from Mrs. Marlowe directly stating she was unavailable and could not watch the children." Sienna stiffened. But her attorney wasn't done. He pivoted toward me. "We ask the court to consider Mrs. Marlowe's emotional state. She is 68 years old and has no professional childcare training. She has admitted to being overwhelmed. It's possible she misunderstood events." I felt heat crawl up my spine. Daniel half rose, but Victor put a hand out to stop him. Then the judge asked for the first witness. "Officer Harper Cole." He stepped forward, uniform crisp, voice steady. "In my report," he said, "the children were found crying outside a commercial building with no residential units. The taxi driver stated he was given only a street name. No building number. No indication of the correct side of the river." Sienna's attorney tried to interrupt. "Officer, surely children exaggerate." "They did not exaggerate," Officer Cole said firmly. "They were unsupervised for at least 20 minutes. They had no idea where they were or where to go." This was not a misunderstanding. This was abandonment. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Sienna pressed the tissue to her cheek, trying to maintain her composure, but her fingers trembled. Next came the CPS representative, Marina Wells. Her tone was gentle but uncompromising. We reviewed multiple communications from the mother, she said. They indicate a pattern of last-minute childcare demands, emotional manipulation, and disregard for the children's emotional needs. The incident in question was not an isolated lapse. It fits a larger behavioral pattern. The judge leaned back, absorbing every word. Then Marina added, "The grandmother has been cooperative, transparent, and consistently child-focused throughout this process." For the first time, Sienna looked at me directly. Her eyes burned with something poisonous, fear tangled with rage. Victor stood for closing remarks. "Your Honor, this case is not about age or resentment. It is about safety. 2 small children were left alone on the wrong side of the city. Nothing justifies that." When he sat down, my heartbeat thundered in my ears. The judge's gaze swept the room, landing on me for a moment that felt like an eternity. The truth was out now. Not polished, not pretty, not rehearsed. Just real. Marina Wells returned to the witness stand with a new stack of documents. Her voice stayed calm the way it had been in the precinct, but there was a weight behind every word, now an accumulation of facts no one in the courtroom could look away from. "Your Honor," she began, "our investigation did not begin and end with the taxi incident. We conducted interviews with teachers, reviewed school records, and spoke with individuals who have interacted with the children over the past several years. Sienna stiffened. Her attorney whispered something urgently in her ear, but she didn't blink. Her hands gripped the tissue until it shredded between her fingers. Marina lifted the first document. We received reports from Riverside Elementary indicating several prior concerns. Daniel inhaled sharply beside Victor. I touched his arm, grounding him. Marina continued. In the fall semester 2 years ago, Ava told a school counselor she was scared of being left again. A quiet gasp escaped me. I hadn't known any of this. The judge leaned forward. Explain. Marina nodded. The counselor documented the conversation. Ava was asked what she meant. She said her mother often forgot to pick her up and she worried it would happen again. The counselor attempted follow-up with the family, but communication was inconsistent. Sienna's attorney shot up. Objection. Children misinterpret things. My client was in the middle of career changes at that time. Marina remained composed. The school attempted contact multiple times. On 2 occasions, Mrs. Brennan did not respond, and on 1 occasion she hung up before the counselor finished speaking. The judge made a note. Marina opened another folder. There were 3 late pickups in that same year, where staff reported Ava crying and saying she didn't want to be forgotten. Daniel covered his face with one hand. His shoulders shook not with anger this time, but grief. Sienna's attorney tried again. These are isolated incidents. They are not isolated, Marina said. They represent a recurring concern. The taxi event aligns with a documented pattern of negligence. Sienna glared at Marina. You're twisting everything. Marina turned toward her gently. Mrs. Brennan, the documentation is not emotional interpretation. It is recorded fact. The judge gestured for Marina to continue. She lifted another report. There were also concerns from Jonah's preschool. One teacher stated he frequently arrived without proper supplies or with items he didn't recognize, indicating they were packed in haste or by someone not paying attention. Daniel let out a hollow breath. I didn't know. She told me everything was fine. Marina turned to him. You were not home for most of these occurrences. And Mrs. Brennan often cited you being unavailable as the reason. Sienna snapped her head toward Daniel. Because you never help. You're always gone. Daniel stood abruptly. Gone. I was working to support our family, and you told me you had everything under control. You said the kids were thriving. They were, until your mother started meddling. She shot back. Victor rose calmly, placing a steadying hand on Daniel's shoulder. Sit, he murmured. Marina resumed, unfazed. There is also a documented instance where Jonah wandered near a busy street outside his daycare. Staff contacted Mrs. Brennan, but she took over 30 minutes to arrive. When asked why, she said she lost track of time. Sienna slammed her tissue on the table. I had a migraine. Marina didn't flinch. The daycare recorded that explanation. They also recorded that this was not the first time Jonah was left waiting. Silence swept the courtroom. Not confusion, not disbelief, but the heavy realization that the facade had cracked too far to repair. The judge exhaled long and slow. This presents a pattern of ongoing neglect. Daniel whispered, My kids! His voice broke. My kids were living through this and I didn't see it. I reached forward, squeezing his hand. He didn't pull away. He held on. Sienna's gaze darted between us, panic rising beneath her perfect exterior. Her lips trembled. For the first time, she looked less angry and more exposed, as if the truth she'd spent years rearranging and rewriting had finally become too heavy to carry. When the judge called my name, my knees felt unsteady, but my resolve did not. I stood smoothing the front of my cardigan and walked to the witness stand. Daniel squeezed my hand as I passed. His eyes were red, but determined. I took the oath, sat down, and folded my hands lightly in my lap. Victor approached first. His voice remained gentle. Mrs. Marlowe, in your own words, can you describe what occurred the day the children were found? I nodded. I received a call from Officer Harper Cole, informing me that my grandchildren were found alone outside a commercial building on the east side of Portland. They were crying. They had no idea where they were. I had told their mother Sienna that I could not watch them that weekend. There was a quiet rustle through the gallery. Victor continued. Did you at any point tell Mrs. Brennan you were available? No, I said. I told her clearly that I was unavailable. She became angry. She hung up. And were you aware she intended to send the children to your home anyway? No, I said. I had no idea. Victor nodded. Thank you. He turned to the judge. No further questions. Then Sienna's attorney stood. He walked toward me slowly, the way someone approaches a witness they believe will crack easily. Mrs. Marlowe, he began, you are 68 years old. Correct. Yes. You live alone, that is correct. He clasped his hands behind his back, tilting his head. Is it possible you misunderstood Sienna's intentions? Perhaps she believed you would be home. She claims you often offer last-minute help. I misunderstood nothing I said. She asked. I said no. He narrowed his eyes. You sound very certain. But isn't it true that in the past you've allowed personal feelings to affect your judgment? No, I said. Isn't it also true, he added, that you have been overly involved in their marriage? No. He leaned closer. Mrs. Marlowe, isn't this entire hearing simply a result of your resentment toward your daughter-in-law? I lifted my chin. This hearing is the result of her abandoning 2 children on a sidewalk. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. His smile tightened. You have a history of conflict with my client. Isn't it true she once threatened to limit your access to the children? I felt the room sharpen. Daniel leaned forward in his seat. Yes, I said. A collective gasp rippled through the gallery. Sienna jerked upright. That was taken out of context. Her attorney held out a hand signaling her to stop. He turned back to me slowly. She threatened you. She said that if I didn't stop making things difficult, she would reconsider letting me see Ava and Jonah, I replied, voice steady. That was 2 years ago. The judge made another note. Sienna's attorney swallowed. You never reported this. No, I said, because I loved my grandchildren, and I was afraid she meant it. The silence was utter and complete, heavy with truth. I could feel Sienna staring at me, fury radiating from her like heat, but it no longer had claws. It no longer reached inside me the way it once had. I met her eyes. She blinked first. Her power over me had finally evaporated. When Judge Keaton returned from recess, the entire courtroom shifted. The quiet wasn't calm, it was tight, bracing the way air feels right before lightning touches ground. Daniel sat rigid beside Victor. I kept my hands folded, palms damp. Sienna dabbed beneath her eyes, rehearsing her grief with each delicate touch of the tissue. Judge Keaton adjusted her glasses and spoke. I have reviewed the police documentation, CPS reports, school records, and all submitted evidence. The testimony presented paints a concerning and consistent pattern. Sienna straightened in her seat, forcing a soft, trembling breath. Daniel held his hands together so tightly his knuckles whitened. The judge continued, her voice steady. First, regarding custody, Mr. Marlowe will assume primary physical custody of the children effective immediately. Sienna made a sound half gasp, half choke. Second, the judge said, ignoring the interruption, Mrs. Brennan will receive supervised visitation only. All visits must be arranged through a court-approved supervisor. Sienna jerked to her feet. No, absolutely not. Sit down, her attorney hissed, tugging at her sleeve. Sienna remained standing, eyes wild. You cannot take my children from me. This is Evelyn's doing. She twisted everything. Judge Keaton didn't flinch. Mrs. Brennan, if you cannot contain yourself, You will be removed from this courtroom. Victor leaned toward Daniel. Stay calm. Let the judge finish. Judge Keaton turned a page. Third, Mrs. Brennan is required to complete an approved parenting course and individual therapy focusing on emotional regulation and responsible caregiving. Sienna's voice cracked. You're treating me like I'm a criminal. The judge stared at her with the cool patience of someone who had heard the same defense 20 times that week. This isn't criminal court. This is child welfare court. The children's safety takes priority over your indignation. Sienna collapsed into her chair, shaking her head violently. Judge Keaton continued forth, due to the severity of the incident, you are prohibited from transporting the children without prior approval. Sienna slammed her fist against the table. They were fine. Nothing happened to them. Daniel's voice rose raw and breaking. They were abandoned on a sidewalk, Sienna. Her face whipped toward him. Because your mother lied to me, she said she would. No. I said quietly, but clearly. I told you no. You simply didn't care. Sienna lunged up again, pointing at me. You're the reason for all of this. You wanted my life to fall apart, Victor whispered sharply. Mrs. Marlowe, don't respond further. Sienna continued screaming. You think you're better than me? You think you deserve them more? You think Judge Keaton struck her gavel hard? The crack rang through the room. Enough. Mrs. Brennan approached the bench. Her attorney pulled on her arm, but she resisted. Only when the judge's eyes darkened did Sienna finally stand and stumble forward. Judge Keaton lowered her voice, but we could still hear every word. Your behavior today confirms the concerns raised in these reports. You are not presently capable of providing a safe, stable environment. Until you demonstrate sustained improvement, your access to your children will remain limited and supervised. Sienna trembled, mascara streaking. Please, Your Honor, they're all I have. The judge's expression softened a fraction. Not pity, just firmness, tempered with humanity. And that, she said, is why you must change. Then she added, one final order for the safety of the children and Mrs. Evelyn Marlowe, a temporary restraining order is granted. Mrs. Brennan, you are not permitted contact outside approved channels. Gasps flickered through the gallery. Daniel closed his eyes, relief breaking through the grief. I felt a shudder run through me, fear giving way to something stronger. Sienna turned toward me, face collapsing into rage, betrayal, disbelief. You did this, she whispered hoarsely. You destroyed my life. I held her gaze steady and unshaken. You destroyed it yourself. The judge struck the gavel one final time. Court is adjourned. Sienna's scream echoed behind us as bailiffs approached her world collapsing, piece by piece, while Daniel reached for my hand. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel afraid. The truth had spoken out loud, and it had finally been louder than her lies. Daniel moved into action the way a man does when he realizes what almost slipped through his fingers. He set up charts on the fridge for homework and bedtime. He rearranged his work schedule, calling his boss with a voice that didn't ask for permission. It simply stated what needed to happen. Ava and Jonah stayed in my house for the first few weeks. Their shoes by my door, their laughter in my hallway, their toothbrushes next to mine. Healing didn't come in a rush. It came in tiny, delicate shifts. One evening I found Jonah asleep without the hallway light on for the first time. His dinosaur lay across his chest, and his face, usually creased with worry, looked soft. Ava stopped waking up in the middle of the night. She no longer sleepwalked to my door whispering, "Grandma, did Mom forget?" She didn't ask that anymore. She didn't need to. At breakfast one morning, she pushed her cereal bowl toward me and whispered, "I feel safe here." I didn't tell her how much those words broke me. I just kissed her forehead and said, "I'm glad, sweetheart." Daniel watched us from the kitchen sink, drying a mug. He cleared his throat. Mom, thank you. You don't need to thank me, I said. No, he insisted quietly. I do. I wasn't here. And you stepped in when everything fell apart. He looked tired, bone-tired, but underneath that exhaustion was something steady present. For the first time in years, he looked like the father he always wanted to be. Outside my home, the world wasn't as gentle. Some women from church crossed the street when they saw me. Others unfriended me quietly. One left a voicemail that said, "You embarrassed the entire family." Gloria Benton snapped when she heard it. Embarrassed, she barked. She saved 2 children. If these people had spines, they'd applaud instead of gossip. I laughed softly. I'm too old to be fighting for approval. Gloria poured us tea. You're not fighting for approval, you're fighting for truth. And truth tends to make cowards uncomfortable. Her words settled something inside me. I still saw the gossip. I still heard the whispers. But they didn't latch onto me the way they once would have, because I saw the truth every night when I tucked Ava's hair behind her ear. I heard it when Jonah giggled from under a blanket fort. I felt it when Daniel hugged me longer than he had in years. The cost of truth was steep, but the price of silence would have been unbearable. One afternoon, after picking Ava up from school, I found a new message on my phone. The sender's name made my stomach tighten. Sienna. I stepped onto the porch before opening it. The air was cold enough to sting. Her text was short. I hope you're proud of yourself. You took everything from me. I read it twice, feeling an old ache flicker. An ache built from years of bending, of smoothing over, of trying to earn peace from someone who weaponized love. I typed slowly. I didn't take anything. I protected the children. I didn't add more. I didn't apologize. I didn't comfort her. Her reply came seconds later. You ruined my life. I locked my phone. Daniel stepped outside, noticing my expression. Was it her? Yes. He waited. Do you want to talk about it? I shook my head. There's nothing left to say. He hesitated, then placed a hand on my back. She'll face her consequences. You don't have to hold them for her anymore. For a long moment, we stood there together in the fading light. No shouting, no fear, no old ghosts dictating our roles. Just truth. Just family. Just the quiet that finally follows a storm. It started with an email she never expected. I did not see it myself, of course. But Daniel did, sitting at my kitchen table one Tuesday morning while Ava and Jonah argued softly over which cereal to eat. He glanced at his phone and frowned. She just messaged me, he said. From her work email. I put my mug down. What did she say? He hesitated, then read it aloud. They suspended me. Someone sent my employer the CPS findings. They said my public image no longer aligns with company values. Ava giggled at something on the television, oblivious. Jonah drove a toy car across the table leg. She worked so hard to build that image, Daniel murmured. The perfect, organized mom balancing everything. The image was real to her, I said. The reality never was. His phone buzzed again. Another message. He sighed. Now she's saying, you did this. You and your mother. I looked at him. We did not send anything. I know he said, CPS sends notifications to certain employers automatically when a case reaches this level, especially with public-facing roles. He set the phone down and rubbed his eyes. The truth finally caught up to her. Within a week, more cracks appeared. Gloria came over with her tablet tucked under her arm. You should see this, she said, half grim, half vindicated. She opened a social media app and pulled up Sienna's page. The glossy photos were still there. Perfect angles, matchy outfits. Motivational captions about motherhood and self-care. But the latest post was different. Sienna had uploaded a selfie with red-rimmed eyes and a long caption, "Some people will do anything to steal your kids." Some grandmothers cannot accept their age and try to replace the real mother. I am being attacked and lied about. Please keep me in your prayers. The comments section was a battlefield. At first, her followers rallied. You're such a good mom. Grandparents can be so controlling. Stay strong, Mama. Then the tone shifted. Gloria scrolled further down. Look, an anonymous account had replied with a link. Public record. Since you want to talk about the truth, here it is. Attached beneath the comment were screenshots of the court order and redacted pages from the CPS report. Names blurred. Facts intact. Daniel appeared behind us, drying his hands on a dish towel. Is that... Yes, Gloria said. It is. Sienna's narrative began to crumble in real time. New comments flooded in. You left them, where those kids could have been hurt. This is not grandma drama. This is neglect. Her replies grew more frantic, less polished. They are exaggerating. My mother-in-law hates me. You do not understand what she is like. But it did not matter. The more she typed, the more unsteady she sounded. Another notification popped up. A brand she had partnered with for years posted a statement of their own. We were recently made aware of serious concerns regarding the behavior of one of our collaborators. Effective immediately, we have ended our partnership. Gloria exhaled slowly. She built herself on a lie. Now the lie is eating itself. I watched the screen for another moment, then turned away. I did not need to see the rest. 2 months later, Victor called me into his office. He slid a document across the table. The judge reviewed the ongoing situation. Given Sienna's behavior after the ruling, harassing messages, attempts to contact you directly, despite the temporary restraining order, there is now a petition to make the order permanent. I stared at the paper. Permanent. He nodded. This will protect you and the children. She can still petition the court in the future to amend it if she proves genuine change, but for now, this is the strongest shield the system can give. Will it hurt her case? I asked. It already has, he said. But this is not about punishing her. It is about protecting you. I thought about the texts, the late-night accusations, the guilt-laced messages, the threats disguised as pleas. I picked up the pen and signed. The ink felt like a full stop at the end of a sentence I had spent my whole life trying to rewrite. While Sienna's online world collapsed, our smaller world at home settled into a new rhythm. Daniel dropped the kids off at my house every morning on his way to work. Jonah would run straight to the little table we had set up for his blocks. Ava would head to the couch with her notebook and ask, Grandma, can you help me with my story? We did homework at my kitchen table. We cooked simple dinners together. We argued about bedtimes and laughed about spilled milk and cried sometimes when nightmares slipped back in unexpectedly. One night, as I tucked Jonah into the pull-out bed we kept in the spare room, he grabbed my hand. Grandma. Yes, honey. I do not worry about getting left anymore, he said. Not when I am here. My eyes burned. I kissed his forehead. You are not going to be left. In the hallway, Ava had taped a piece of paper to the wall. Crayon houses a crooked sun, 2 stick figures holding hands. At the bottom, in big, careful letters, she had written, Grandma's house safe. Later, when the kids were asleep and the house finally quiet, I walked over to the calendar hanging by the fridge. The square for the day of the taxi incident was still circled in red. I reached up, peeled the small red sticker from that square, and pressed Ava's drawing over it, smoothing the paper gently with my hand. The past was not erased. It was covered by something stronger. Before I turned off the kitchen light, I picked up my phone and recorded a short voice note for the channel that first encouraged me to share my story. If you listened all the way through, I said softly, tell me where you are listening from, or share a story of a time you finally chose the truth over keeping the peace. Tap like so more people hear this and subscribe if you want to hear what happened next in our lives. Your voices matter more than you know. Then I set the phone down and stood there for a moment longer, breathing in the stillness of my kitchen. The quiet rise and fall of two small chests down the hall, the absence of dread. The truth did not just destroy her, it freed us.